questions, something which will fundamentally question who you are, really creates a big difference. And I'm just going to end by giving 3 particular examples, all of which were from the original Artists in Creative Education project, which illustrated some of the ways in which artists were able to do this. One of the areas is in concepts. Concepts, the ability to conceptualize, is really, really important to young people and to adults. It is the mechanism by which we translate reality into things we understand. And unless we're able to conceptualize, actually we can't cope with the world. It's a really key aspect. And on the whole, the education doesn't allow enough space for conceptualization, and often teachers will go, oh, you can't possibly do stuff like that with primary school kids. So this was a project in Holland. I met the artist after the project, and I said, oh, you've been working in primary school. What was your project about? And she said, oh, my project was about regrets. And I said, regrets? Why? She said, well, I was about 35 and I've got a lot of regrets, so I thought I'd work on it. So there was the concept. And I said, well, what did the kids think? And she said, they thought it was brilliant. They had no idea that adults had regrets. And it opened the whole world of adulthood up to them in this really interesting way. Well, what did they do? The kids went out into the community and they interviewed old people and their parents and other people like that about what regrets they had. They actually then worked on creating a big exhibition about regrets, which was in the centre of the school, and the parents came and saw it, and so on and so forth. Now, a lot of those elements, going out and interviewing people in the community, creating exhibitions and so forth, are common in lots of different projects, but that concept was what really got the kids involved and excited in what happened. And I think artists, particularly conceptual artists obviously, but artists tend to be very conceptual, and they're able to bring those lenses to bear, and they're hugely motivating and engaging for young people. And you can do it in many, many different ways. And I think it very clearly demonstrated something which artists bring, which isn't naturally there, but once teachers see, they will adopt that practice. I also particularly like this. One of the great problems with creative partnerships is ever finding a photograph which captures everything I'm talking about, because usually all the photographs are happy kids with a bit of face paint on, smiling and so on and so on, and they tell you absolutely nothing. And this particular artist, I said, oh, can I have some images for you? And she sent this to me, and I think this is one of the great sort of creative partnerships photographs. You can't look at it without asking questions, can you? It simply doesn't answer the stuff, but you know that there was a process involved and that there were people there, and there was inquiry and exploration and a whole series of things. All of that begins to be present in there without necessarily giving you the answers. And I think that notion of creative partnerships work being inquiry-based about questions and leading you in, I think this is a great photograph for that reason. Quite a lot of people think I'm mad when I talk about this. Emotions. This emotion thing, I think, is very big. I was visiting a school the other day and talking to some children, and I said, is it really important that teachers do creative things in schools? And the kids said, it's really important that teachers do creative things. And I said, why? And this boy said, well, I'll tell you why. When my teacher's teaching her normal stuff, she's got her grumpy face on. And if I don't understand, I don't like asking questions. She said, but when she's doing her creative stuff, she's got her happy face on. And then if I don't understand, I ask questions and she explains to me. Now, there's quite a lot of kids, and there was the head teacher and a few teachers there listening to this conversation. And you could hear the adults breathe in, like, because he was pulling back the curtain on the big lie. Because what he was saying was, I change my learning behaviour according to the mood my teacher is in. And teachers like to pretend that's not true. It's much easier to pretend it's not true. So we very often say to teachers, if you're in a really bad mood, you should go into the class and say, I'm in a really bad mood. And the teachers say, you can't do that, that'll scare them. And I go, no, you don't understand. What scares them is they already know you're in a really bad mood and you're not willing to tell them why. That's scary, and so forth. This is actually de-scaring it. Now, there is no way you can bring art into a classroom without dealing with emotion. There is no art without emotion in it. And one of the things which, again, the researchers talked about in observing artists in these situations is they talk about emotion very freely and very openly with the children. And the children, the young people, respond to that incredibly positively. And it's a really, really important element. This is a simple project. This is from Austria. The artist practitioner in this particular case has a practice where he comes in with big posters and magazines, and the kids cut out faces and they stick them on boards and they put them on, and they then have to come up with a monologue which explains the character that they've just created. It is in fact a literacy project, because what actually happens is after having performed the monologue they then have to write it down, and doing creative writing is in everybody's literacy curriculum, and so it's a very easy way of stimulating kids to do it. But in this particular class there was a child whose parents were getting divorced, and it was one of those really messy divorces where one of the parents had already moved out, the other parent could no longer afford the apartment they lived on because there was only one salary, so she'd moved somewhere else, which meant the kid had to move school, so he'd lost his dad, he'd lost all his friends, his whole world was falling apart. So when it was his turn, he came up with this story. This is the boy, and his story was this. I'm a man, and last night I went to the bar and I drank much too much, and I shouldn't have done it, but afterwards I drove home and by mistake I ran over and killed my parents. But nobody saw me do it, so I put the bodies in the back, and I've taken them home and I've buried them in the garden. And now everybody's very worried because my parents are missing, and they're all being very nice to me because they think I must be upset. But they don't realise that I murdered them. Now, the thing about the story is that young kids, particularly of this age, when their parents get divorced, feel really guilty. And the reason they feel guilty is because their concept of what a family is they were these two adults who were not a family, but they came together and they had me, and now we're a family. Therefore, I'm the family. Therefore, if they don't want to be family anymore, it's because I've done something wrong, because they don't want me anymore. So they feel really guilty. What you get in a situation like that is that you create a space in which it is safe for the person to articulate, the child to articulate how he or she is feeling, but it's a metaphor. So it's not actually going, actually I feel I've murdered my parents. And he probably couldn't articulate it as clearly as that, but the space has been created in which he can make reference to it. And then everyone else around can go, I see what's going on. And schools have mechanisms for then engaging and be able to support the boy through it. But what you can see is with that going on inside him, no learning is going to be taking place in him at all. And it's the ability of artists easily to bring emotion into the classroom and create those safe spaces in which those emotions are expressed that is really important. And the final example I'm going to give from us in creative education, this was a film made by Jonas Hus, who were one of the partners in Malmo here. I'm just going to show you the first few minutes of the film, and then I'll explain to you why it's so important.